everyone, I'm Nicole Formosa. I'm the editor of Bike Magazine, and today we're talking about the Ibis Mojo 4. That's sort of Ibis's classic do-it-all trail bike, mid-travel, 27.5, kind of in the same category as the Yeti's SB140 or the Santa Cruz 5010. And it's been a while since this bike has had any attention. It's been about 3 years since the Mojo 3 came out. And so, I mean, it was pretty due for some updates. Ibis didn't change the travel at all. It's 130 rear, 140 front. With the Mojo HD in the line, there's really no reason to up the travel any. But Ibis did take some design details from the HD, which it just redesigned last year. We actually tested that at last year's Bible, if you're curious about that bike. But just a couple design details, and then you know, the Mojo is about a ½ pound lighter than the HD. Reach is about the same, but the chainstays are shorter on the Mojo. That's kind of one of the hallmarks of this bike, is short, stubby chainstays, so Ibis kept that. The head angle got almost 2 degrees slacker at 65.4 in this version. The seat tube angle got more than 2 degrees steeper at 76.7. So just kind of those modern angles, which were kind of needed on this bike. So like I said, they kept the chainstays of 425 millimeters, kind of plays into that just sort of playfulness, agility that Ibis was going for with this bike. The reach did grow quite a bit though, 460 for a medium, 485 for a large. That's 40 millimeters more than the last version of those bikes. It just really modernize the geometry. Another nice feature is just a nice long straight seat tube, so you can fit a long dropper post in there. For a size medium, you can run a 170 or longer, which is just such a nice touch and kind of must have these days. It got the suspension just totally overhauled, new lower and upper links. It's still obviously DW Link bike, long-standing partnership there between Ibis and Dave Weigel. The tune, the suspension tune is quite different. It's really light. Previously, the previous iteration of the Mojo, they offered something called the Roxy tune, which is named after Ibis's designer Roxy, and they weren't able to get the rebound speeds fast enough. So if you were a lighter rider, the bike kind of always felt over damped, and they were able to rectify that with this tune, which they call traction tune. Also with this version, they got rid of the 27 plus option, which makes a ton of sense. That's kind of not really a thing anymore. That trend has, that was a bit of a flash in the pan. I don't need to editorialize on that. And Ibis is really deliberate with this bike and kind of what it's meant for. You know, I think we can have a tendency to sort of endurofy bikes, but Ibis is saying, you know, like, they don't recommend running it with a longer fork than 140 to kind of keep that seat tube angle nice and steep. It's meant to run with an inline air shock, you know, no coil, no piggyback. It's kind of saying, like, this is what we designed this bike for, and this is how it's going to perform the best. And I mean, it's really fun. I spent most of my time on this bike riding kind of what I call my mental health lap from the house. You know, we've kind of all been in this situation where we're riding close to home. And it's 45 minutes, kind of a steep fire road climb, climbs about 800 feet, but most of that climbing is in less than a mile, and then kind of into super steep kind of chute descent, not a lot of technical features. But on the climb, I could really feel that, that traction tune, suspension, the steep seat tube angle. I mean, even on the steepest part of the climb, it's loose. And also another thing that plays into how this bike rides on that kind of terrain is sand, kind of loose, rocky, kitty litter over hard pack is a 2.6 tire, which is a really good fit for this bike. But you know, even on the steepest part of the climb, it just I didn't have any issues with the front wheel wandering or lifting. You know, I was really able to keep the bike planted. I could climb with the shock fully open and maintain that rear wheel traction. On the descent here, it's steep. It's sort of a chute. There's really no rocks. And so in that kind of terrain, I couldn't feel necessarily an advantage over a 29er for for this bike, but it's when I kind of got it out and finally drove somewhere to ride, which, what a novelty. And we're talking like 5 miles away, but got it in some rock gardens, got it in some different terrain. And you know, this bike really, really shines in sort of that fast, smooth single track where you can kind of the swoopy, slalomy, bermy type stuff where you can really whip around the rear end and you just feel the agility of it. And that's really where this bike is going to feel like an advantage over, say, a mid-travel 29er. And it works really well in that platform. When I first got this, I was sort of like, I've been on a 29er, actually the Ripley, for most of the year, and it's been some time since I've been on a 27.5 bike, and was kind of thinking, you know, 130 travel, like, that's kind of fit perfectly for a 29er. But I mean, this bike is really fun, and being back on a 27.5, especially after you've been off one for a while, you really kind of remember that agility, that quickness, that playfulness is something that can get sacrificed with the bigger wheel bike, and it's really nice to ride a bike again that feels like that. I rode this bike as the SLX build, and I did have the carbon wheel upgrade, which is an $800 upgrade. Also $800 is the next bike up, which would be the XT version. And I just, you know, if you have an extra $800, I would say the carbon wheel upgrade that money is much better spent there. The SLX shifts so nice, it's really crisp. For the money, I don't see a reason to spend more to get the XT version. Definitely spend that on the wheels. Some other nice features on the bike: it's got plenty of room for a water bottle, which is obviously a must-have. You can fit up to 203 millimeter rotors, so if you wanted to change those out, there's an option there. Kind of where this bike fits in within Ibis's line is it's got more aggressive angles than the Ripley, and it's a stiffer frame. So there's sort of an advantage there over that short mid-travel 29er. And then, you know, if you're not really looking for something as burly as the Mojo HD, that bike is 153 rear, 170 in front. So I mean, it's a bigger bike, and if the terrain you're riding is not super technical, steep technical kind of terrain, if you're more kind of in it for the climb as the descent, kind of mellower single track, not even mellower. I mean, I took this thing on some rock gardens, and it performed really, really well. But if you're not constantly in super technical terrain and kind of want something burlier like the HD, this is really where that bike is going to fit in.